Hello everyone. Let's talk about the normalizer transformation today, and we will see what are the scenarios applicable or how you can implement those scenarios with examples and the interview questions which are basically coming up in the normalizer transformation. Normalizer transformation is basically active and a connected transformation. What does active transformation mean? Active transformation is a transformation which can change the number of rows which are passing through it. Okay, and it is a connected transformation. Coming to the normalizer transformation, it actually is used for multiple purposes within the Informatica setup. One is whenever you have your source as COBOL sources, this by default comes up as your source qualifier, just like you get XML source qualifier when you use XML sources. Normalizer transformation comes up automatically whenever you use COBOL sources. Okay, and we also use normalizer transformation to extrapolate the number of rows which you are using. Okay, when I say extrapolate, let's say you have a requirement where you want a single record to be generated or populated. Let me make it as generated 10 times. So you're making your single record work or generate 10 different times, so you'll use normalizer there. So let's see the examples of how you can create these 10 different records together and what are the attributes which are required for that. So let's directly go to the example of how we deal with that. So I'll connect to the folder here, repository, and the folder. Let me get the sources required for this. Sources, import from database. We'll take the basic example of DEPT or employee so that it will be clear on the topic. Once you know what or how it works, then this can be used with any project, any requirement you have. So try to understand the behavior of how normalizer transformation acts, and then you can use it in whichever requirement you have it. Okay, from here I take let's say department number, sorry, the department table. I already have this, so I'll just say replace, and from in the target table I'll create another I can still use the same as the target, so I'll again say import from database or CL, which is the connection for Scott, and I'll import DEPT. Okay, so I have the target as well. I'll go to the mapping, just get the source under this connection. So I'll give the mapping name underscore NRM underscore. Let me call this as NRM is just the naming convention which I gave for normalizer. Let me give this as multiple columns, multiple rows. Okay, click OK. I get the source and the source qualifier. Now I get the transformation, create normalizer, DEPT, create, done. Okay, here just drag and drop. See the blue color, dark blue color comment there. It says cannot copy a column to this transformation, which means I cannot directly drag and drop a column to a normalizer transformation. I'll double click, open it, go to the normalizer tab directly, and here I have to manually create the columns, just like we do it when you have your source or the target which is not available in your flat file or the relational source for you to import, you click on create and do it. Similarly, you have to do this here, the name and location. Okay, see the data types. I have only 3 here: number, string and string. I do not have anything called as date, decimal, varchar, any of those, right? So if you notice, date is the primary one. So whenever you're using normalizer transformation and if you have a date, make sure you're converting that to a string, okay, and then use it, else it will not recognize that and it'll fail it. Okay, now I want a single department number record to be generated 5 times. So I have a column called, sorry, I have a attribute called occurs here. I give 5 there, click apply. Okay, so if you notice, as I give 5 as occurs for this, I get the number of input ports for department number in 5 different ports. See these all right arrowheads here, those are all inputs, and on the other side you have the output ports. Now for the target, I said DPT. Now if I update the same thing, it will overwrite my source. So I'll quickly create table dpt underscore nrm as select star from dpt. Okay, I'll truncate this table so that there is no data in this dpt underscore nrm. Okay, table truncated. So I wanted to use a new one, so I'll clear this, get the new table, just say nrm here, search, and I get DEPT here. Okay, so it's the same targets, just a different name. I just wanted to make sure that it is not overwritten with the same source. So DEPT NRM here. Now I'll connect my source. So this department number should be connected 5 times because I wanted it to be generated 5 different times. Okay, now you can ask the question, what about the dname and location? Will those also be generated 5 times? Let's see that. Okay, in this I have department number, this is the output port, department name and department location. So this makes my mapping valid and I can run this. Whenever I run this, I get a single record converted into 5 different records. Okay, now what are these two? What is GK and GC? GK is nothing but generated key. What is a generated key? Whenever we are asking in the Informatica's integration service to increment or to use the normalizer, this GK, which is the generated key, will increment the sequence number each time it passes a source row. So assuming there are 3 records in my source, department number 10, 20 and 30, I'm asking it to generate 5 different times. So 3 into 5, 15. So this GKID will generate a running sequence number from 1 till the end of it. So what is happening here? When the source row contains a multiple occurring column or a multiple occurring group of the columns, the normalizer transformation returns a row for each occurrence. Okay, and when that each occurrence happens, each row contains the same generated key value with which it will identify that it is related to a single record. Okay, now what is GCID? It is generated column ID. Now this port is generated for each multiple occurring columns. This is like an index for the instance of the multiple occurring data. For example, if we have a column which occurs for 5 times, which is the department number in this case, which is the source record again, the normalizer transformation returns us the running sequence number, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 till 15. Okay, so this is generated key, which will be the same for a single record. Generated column ID will be the sequence number. Okay, I'll save this. Go to the workflows, disconnect. This is the work folder which we are working on. So I'll click workflows, create WKF. Let me fetch the mapping name so that we are using the standard one everywhere. Underscore control V. Tasks, create session is underscore create, and in this it is this one. I'll connect to it. Failed parent if the task fails, just to make sure that the workflow also fails whenever the session is failing. And in the connections, my source and the target connections are already enabled, which is good. Repository, save, and start workflow. After the workflow is succeeded, which is running here, let's connect to the database and say select star from. Now I'm querying the target table. Okay, DEPT underscore NRM, which is the normalizer. Okay, if you see here, department number 10 has been created 5 times, 25 times, 35 times, and I have another record which is additional, which is 45 times. Okay, so a single record which is present in your actual department table. If I query this, you'll see only 4 records here. Okay, now all those 4 records into 5 has been, which is 20, has been created. Okay, that's one way of using normalizer transformation. The other one is converting rows to columns. Okay, let's see that example. Okay, in this whole of example, the only thing which we have to remember is we cannot drag and drop records or ports from it's not records, it's ports from your source qualifier to your normalizer. You have to create it manually within this. In the properties tab, you have reset and restart. If you check this, if you click on the reset, it is the GKID or the generated key sequence values end for this session. So when you run it again, it will start from number 1. Restart, whenever we want to start the generated key sequence, I want to start it from 1. Okay, so that's again based on how you want to deal with it and whatever transformations you're using right after this. If you're using that GKID or the GCID, based on that you can divert your records using a router to multiple targets and multiple maplets, which again will make this record go under multiple business rules, justifications or validations, and then hit the data warehouse or the target. Okay, the other point is the date column. We don't have the date attribute, date data type within the normalizer transformation. So whenever you are passing that, make sure the date is converted into a string before it goes into the normalizer transformation. And if you still want that as a date, after it coming out of the normalizer, you have to convert it into toDate. So use toChar before this, toDate after that. Okay, with which you can get both the functionalities of normalizer and the actual requirement of the date. Okay, now let's create another mapping, which is the other way of using it, which is rows to columns. Click OK. Okay, that's already created. Now before we go ahead with that, let's say I have 2 tables. One is store P&L. Let's say I have 3 records: store ID, store name, and the percentage of profit which is earned within quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 of a particular year. Okay, WLM is Walmart, Texas, North Carolina, and Michigan, for example. Okay, let's say we have these three as our source data which are coming in. Now I want to get the annual profit, or I don't want all these to be separately present. If I have to group it, I need to have them under a single store ID, right? So how will you get these rows converted into columns? Normalizer is the best option for that. So if we go to the mapping again, let me import. If I see in the sources and targets, I don't have them. So source, clear, import from database, and this is my source, and my target is here. I'll import from database, which is annual. Same structure. The only thing which is missing within this is I do not have Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4. I just have annual. Okay, just that. Sorry, mapping. So get my source. Okay, same thing again. Go to transformations, create normalizer, NRM underscore annual, create, done. Now again, I cannot drag and drop the content from any transformation. It's not only source qualifier, any transformation I cannot do it. So I have to open this, create what should be my attributes which are present in the target. So that are store ID, store name, annual. Okay, and I want the annual part here, which is the with which I want to calculate the average on an annual basis. So what should be the key which I use for occurs? Should I use the store ID or the annual part? If I use the store ID, it still rolls back to the previous example where it will generate 3 records for each store ID. But here I want the Q1, Q2, Q4, Q3 and Q4 to be in a single, each of it in a separate column. Okay, so I'll convert this as 4 because I have 4 quarters in a year. I'll make that as 4. Store name is a string. Click apply. Okay, the moment we generate, every time the GKID and the GCID comes up. Okay, connect to store ID, input, store name, and all your Q1, Q2 and Q4 will get connected to that. Let's get my target from here. Store PNL annual and connect your output ports. Okay, validate, it's valid, repository, save. Okay, workflows, create. Let me get the mapping name again. The reason I'm doing this is whenever you use the same naming convention for your workflow session, it will be easy for you to identify what object is related to what. Okay, create s underscore the same name, select rows to columns, done, connect, just verify the connections, both of them are available. Now here I'll just make sure that my target is truncated every time it loads. I don't want the previous data to be available so that we get new questions on how this has come up twice and things like that. So save it, start workflow. Okay, if we go to the database now, select star from store P&L annual. Okay, see this, the first record, which is WLM_TX, which has Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4, all of it have been come here like this. Now from this table, either I can use this as a source, or I can the reporting team from here can pull it based on the store ID, aggregate it, do a calculation on this. If they want to do the average, sum, whatever calculation they want it, they can average it based on the, group it based on the store source ID and perform their calculations. So this is how the other part of rows to columns is done within Normalizer transformation. Now, what are the basic interview questions which usually come up within normalizing transformation or the normalizer transformation? The first thing is, what is normalizer? Obviously, normalizer. The answer to that is, normalizer is an active transformation. It is connected and it is used to it becomes as a source qualifier, which is normalizer source qualifier, whenever you're using COBOL sources, and it is used for converting the rows to columns and extrapolating the single record into multiple number of records. Okay, what is the next question? Or the other way of putting it is, what is, okay, when your source is a COBOL source, what is the source qualifier which comes? Can we use the source qualifier directly, or is it something else? It is normalizer source qualifier, that is by default which comes up. Number 3, what is GKID and GCID, which we explained already. These are the two questions which will usually come up. For GKID, it is nothing but the number. Okay, let me put it this way. The integration service of Informatica always increments the generated key sequence number every time it processes a source row. Okay, if, for example, if a source row contains multiple occurring columns, then the normalizer transformation returns a row for each occurrence, which means it will have the same generated key value with which we can identify that this is a related record. GCID is a running sequence number. So how will, it's like this, GKID will be the same for a particular record, how many ever number of times you give the occur. GCID is like an incremental number which will show us the number of records which have been generated or number of records which have been updated. Okay, now the other question which they ask you is, what is occurs? What is occurs and level? Okay, occurs is nothing but it is the number of rows which number of times we want it to be, number of times which we want the row to be calculated. Okay, and it defines the clause specified where the source has multiple occurring rows. Okay, those are the common questions which come up in the normalizer transformation, and these are the uses of it. So again, though we have done example with only this, we can incorporate this transformation with any kind of pre and post transformations. The only thing which we have to remember is the date column. Convert that to toChar before sending it into the normalizer transformation, and convert that back into toDate with whatever format you're looking for after you have done with the normalizing activity of it. Okay, that's about the normalizer transformation.